Hello, and thanks for joining us for a special edition of All Things DSO. We are live with Brian Colao, the director of the Dykema DSO Industry Group. And this is going to be a very interactive session. So if you have any questions, please add them into the chat, or you can submit them through the Q&A that's on the side of your screen. So Brian, how are you doing?
Well, Happy New Year, everybody. I don't think we've been back since the new year. So it's that time again, and there's a lot going on in the world. So glad to be with you, Beth, as always.
Yeah, the last time we spoke was the day after the election. And so now we're speaking the day after the inauguration. Tell me, what are you hearing? What are people talking about now?
Yeah, it's going to take a while. I do think that, things are shading in a very positive direction for the dental industry and the DSO industry in particular. But again, we're less than or right around 24 hours since the transition of power. So while there has been, again, this is not a general news show. There's been a lot of executive orders and things going on, pardons and things happening. That's beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. So while you might argue, it has been a momentous 24 hours. As soon as President Trump took over, he did, in fact, issue a lot of orders and do a lot of things. As it pertains to the dental industry, though, it's going to take time. Things are not very much different from how they were a week ago or a month ago. It's going to take a few months of, the new presidential administration, I think, before we start seeing some, real tangible sort of results on things.
Well, when we last spoke in November, people were feeling more excited about what was happening, and especially when it came to mergers and acquisitions in the market for M&A. Then some things happened with the Fed in December that I know you and I had talked about, and there's a little bit more of a cautious approach. Tell me, what are you hearing? What are you feeling now that we're midway through January?
Yeah, a couple things, right? We were together, I think, in November after the election. And sort of after that, the Fed said that it only anticipated lowering interest rates potentially twice this year. And I think the market was expecting 3 or 4 times. So near the end of last year, the market went down, the general stock market went down a fair amount because people were disappointed, and the rationale was inflation was stubbornly staying above 2%. It was 2.6 or something, and it's got to get below 2% before you start lowering interest rates. So, there was a little bit of pessimism. A lot of optimism, but a little pessimism sort of sprinkled in. And, I went to the JP Morgan Chase Healthcare Conference in first week of January in San Francisco, talked to probably 3 or 4 dozen private equity groups while I was out there. And I could say there's optimism. It's guarded or cautious optimism, but it's not pessimism. And I think last year there was a lot of pessimism, and we went from pessimism to optimism, but I think people are still moving slow. They're not just jumping into, hey, it's now the second week of January. Let's go right now. It's more like, hey, we're looking for deals. We're interested in deals. We think there's going to be an environment here where some deals can close, but we're going to proceed, rather cautiously and do our diligence. And I think that's kind of where we are, right now. And there's a number of dental deals that I've sort of been approached about where no one seems to be in a particular hurry, but they want to do the deal. Last year they were quite frankly not going to do the deal. This year they think they're going to get the deal done, but they're going to take their time, do their diligence, and sort of walk through the process.
So if you had a crystal ball, would you say that you're looking at more third quarter, fourth quarter for some of the larger deals to be getting done?
Yeah, that's what I said in November, that I felt like, even without all this additional information, I said, look, it's going to take some time. What I said is the first quarter is going to be, maybe just ever so slightly better than the fourth quarter, but, not that much of a difference. Second quarter, things will start to sort of take off, and it'll be third or fourth quarter, before you really start to see some deals. That's sort of still my opinion, end of third quarter, fourth quarter, really, because it's just going to take some time. It's going to take some time, and quite frankly, some deals that people might start looking at in the next month or two that in the red hot market of 2021, might have been, taking 3 months or 4 months to close. Things might take 6 or 7 months to close. So put it that way, even if you start looking at it in February or March, it might be August or September or October before, the thing's ready to close. It's just going to take a little longer, and people are going to do their homework and do their diligence, given what we've been through in the last 2 years.
What about smaller DSOs? Maybe the emerging market. Maybe 2 to 20 or a little bit bigger. Do you feel like are you hearing about deals for those that could be happening earlier in the year?
Yeah, and that's always been. Last year, we
Mhm.
were doing deals like that. Again, at a slower pace than 2020. I mean, 2021 was like, you're my age, Beth. You remember like Pac-Man from the 80s, like it's just eating everything up. That's not sort of happening, but those deals are getting done with a decent amount of frequency, and they're getting done right now in this quarter where people are looking at onesies, twosies, threesies, five offices. Those kind of deals are getting done. If you're a platform of 10 or 15, you can get, that sort of deal done. But a lot of the larger volume deals, I just think it's going to take a little bit more time before that stuff starts really, occurring.
So for the smaller groups that you were just talking about, are they merging with DSOs or private equity groups coming in and backing them, and they're staying their same size, but now they have an influx of cash so that they can expand their own brand? Like, what kinds of deals are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's all of the above, right? If you're a one office practice or a two office practice, more often than not, a strategic, an established DSO might be buying you, because it's a little bit rare for a private equity group to say, hey, we're starting a platform with one office or two. I mean, I've seen it a few times, but those would be much smaller, what I call like mom and pop private equity groups, where they've raised some money from friends and family, but it's not an institutional, private equity investor. But most private equity investors are not going to start a platform with one office or two offices. They're going to look for a much bigger platform. So if you've got one or two offices, more than likely, a strategic, an existing DSO is probably, going to buy you right now. And those deals continued all last year, and they're continuing right now. And we at Dykema have a number of those deals in the pipeline. We're representing buyers and buying a solo office or two offices. And, those deals are largely going to continue to go on pretty much without interruption. But everybody always wants to know, when are the big DSOs going to trade again? When are we going to buy 100 office, DSOs? When are we going to do, those much more larger transactions? And I think you will see it this year. I think you will, but I think it's going to be the latter portion of the year.
So a couple of years ago, we saw some foreign PE investment firms coming into the market. Are you seeing that still, or are you seeing it, has that abated a bit?
No, there's a lot of interest, and there's a lot of interest from private equity groups, from existing DSOs, from family funds, mom and pop investors, where you've got together with, a bunch of like doctors, lawyers, accountants, raised $5 or $10 million. You want to go buy some stuff. That's still continuing on. I just think folks are doing their homework a little more, doing diligence, scrutinizing deals a little more carefully. In 2021, the last part of 2020, pretty much anything would go. There was almost nothing that wouldn't go, at some level. Now there's just a lot more diligence, going into it. And if, it turns out that your organization has trouble for a whole variety of different reasons, it could have trouble. There could be financial issues. There could be regulatory issues. There could be leadership issues. There could be culture issues, turnover of staff issues, a whole bunch of issues. But if they look at it and, it's a troubled organization, you might have to wait. They're not going to be necessarily lining up to buy those organizations in this marketplace.
Well, I was just going to ask about that. One of the questions that has come in is, what are you hearing about DSOs struggling with cash? And do you have any insight into whether some may be filing for bankruptcy?
Yeah, that was a real 2023, 2024 phenomenon, where we've had a lot of, and we've been through this before on this show, Beth, where the interest rates almost overnight, almost tripled in some cases. And all of a sudden, organizations that were doing quite well found themselves struggling in default under their credit facilities. And, a lot of issues came up. Mostly that's behind us. At this moment, I'm not even aware of a single one. It's possible somebody, but I'm not aware of even a single organization at this moment that's contemplating a bankruptcy or anything like that, because mostly it's recovered from the low point. It's not where everybody wants it. And again, it's going to take some time to get where everybody wants it, but it's recovered from the low point. And most organizations that I'm working with or I'm aware of, if they're not going like this, at least they're trending upward and things are definitely improving. And that's where I would say we are now. Things are trending upward. It's not straight up. It's sort of at a slope up, but they're trending better and things are improving. And it's just going to take some time for them to get where they need to be.
We have another question that has come in. Do you foresee a shift away from recapitalization and more towards growing single practice revenues?
Well, look, we've been doing that for 2 years. That's called same store growth. I mean, I do think when the best way to increase your EBITDA and grow is to buy more offices. And that's historically been the way it's been done. So at the first opportunity, and it's an organizational specific. Some organizations are doing really well. Some are doing okay. Some are doing average. Some are struggling a little. Everybody's at a different, position. But I do think on an organizational basis, as soon as that organization is able to start buying offices again, I think it's going to do it at the earliest opportunity. Now, the interesting thing is I don't think we've abandoned same store growth. It's here to stay. I think it's a really solid way to increase your EBITDA, either in combination with M&A activity, or if you're not able to do M&A activity, that might be the only way to do it, for a period of time. So I think same store growth is here to stay. I think there's been a big emphasis on same store growth over the last 2 years. I don't think that's going away, but I think the question they were asking is there just a shift to that and not M&A? No, I think whenever it's feasible for organizations to get back to M&A, they will, but I think it can be very potent doing M&A and increasing your EBITDA while also increasing your same store growth. That's like a double dip or a double whammy, 2 ways to increase your EBITDA. So I think everybody that can do that will.
Speaking of same store growth, I feel like the last 2 years was all about, AI for diagnostics. And that was a really easy way to be expanding. I was wondering about this year. Do you feel like that you're hearing more buzz about adding specialty into your DSO, expanding through services that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one sort of limiting factor on same store growth is there were a lot of tools out there. You mentioned diagnostic AI. There were a lot of patient finance platforms, a lot of different things out there, membership plans being another one, where if you implemented them, it definitely would increase your same store growth, but you had to pay a little money to do it. It wasn't free. You had to make a little investment to do it. And there were certain organizations that just didn't find themselves in a cash position last year where they were like, even if this particular application could help us, we're just not going to invest the money this year. We got to settle things down this year. And when things get just a little bit better, then we can look at doing it. And like we've been talking about, things are a little bit better. They're not, completely exploding yet, but they're a little bit better. And there's a lot of organizations that I feel like are in a position here in 2025, maybe if they said, hey, we just don't want to upgrade our PMS system this year. We just don't want to, adopt AI yet. We just don't want to adopt this patient finance platform yet. We don't want to do this membership plan yet. This year, they're like, things have gotten to the point where we definitely can do that. So I think you're going to see a lot more folks jump in with 2 feet. That last year was maybe an exploratory year, meaning they spent time doing their diligence and saying, these tools, these applications could be better for us, but we're not quite ready to make that investment. I think this year they're ready to make that investment.
I was talking to Jill Nesbitt, I think it was on Friday, and she was saying that she had a group that she was talking to. I'm not sure how many practices, like maybe 5 or 6. And they were talking to a private equity company, and the private equity company was saying, like, we are looking for a group that is on one practice management system, that, we don't want them to be on multiple.
They're finally figuring this out. I don't mean to laugh on your show and make a big joke of it, but yeah.
It used to be like Legos, like they would just stack everything together.
I have been saying this for a long time. The folks at Planet DDS have been saying this for a long time. And most every, PMS company has been saying this for a long time because it's true. it's very difficult if you say you got 50 offices, 60, 70 offices, having 3 or 4 different PMS systems. I mean, for a while, and everywhere I've ever spoke on this, I made that point. I said part of being a DSO is implementing uniform, centralized, procedures and applications and things. And to me, that always included like one PMS system for the whole organization. But there were some folks that tried it out for a while, said, look, we're going to acquire everything we have an opportunity to acquire, and we'll straighten this out later. And even some folks said, hey, it's not that big a deal operating on multiple PMS systems. We'll do it. I think 2 years into, 3 years into that, I think almost everybody I've talked to, including organizations that gave that a shot, have said, yeah, the time has come. We pretty much got to be on one PMS system. We thought we were maybe going to try it on 2 or 3. It's just not feasible. It's too inefficient. So yes, the fact that a PE group would tell you that, correct, I would say, yeah, I mean, that's was somewhat, at least I always felt like that was somewhat obvious. But I have to say, for a while, there were some constituents, some DSOs, some PE groups, some others that said, hey, maybe they thought they were going to give it a shot on a couple. They said, it's not worth the investment right now to convert everybody to one. But almost everybody that I'm talking to in the marketplace now, whether it's PE groups, whether it's family funds, whether it's existing DSOs, small DSOs, middle DSOs, they all tend to say you kind of gotta on everything, not just PMS systems. If it's AI, you can't be using all 3 AI platforms. You got to pick one. If it's a membership plan, you got to pick one. If it's a patient finance tool, you got to pick one. I mean, there's a whole bunch of applications where you really got to go with one. Labs, you need to consolidate to maybe not one, but a limited amount of labs. You can't have hundreds of labs. You really got to consolidate.
Well, this makes sense, right? It's like your procurement system. You don't want to have different people ordering from different procurement systems. You want to be able to track it. And so you need everyone to be using the same tools to make that easy.
So the good news is I think the market has pretty much figured that out. Some people that have been in the space a lot of time would have said, hey, that was always the way. This isn't some big development. But, there were a few that said they were going to try it a little different way. But there's almost nobody I talk to now. And that wasn't the case 2 years ago. But now there's almost nobody I talk to that says, yeah, we're going to have 3 or 4 PMS systems. Like, that's fine. Like, almost nobody says that. Everybody's like, yeah, you pretty much got to commercialize, professionalize, go on, one system.
So we have another question that came in regarding specialties. It says, are you seeing a trend of general dentistry DSOs looking to acquire or partner with specialty groups to increase services? And I guess it would be instead of adding specialty just within their own practices that they already have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely seeing the trend of incorporating specialty into the existing platform. I mean, I'm definitely seeing that. And that's been something that I've recommended for years. Like when I gave a presentation on how to maximize your value, that was one of the things I said. You've got to find a way to incorporate orthodontics, oral surgery, endodontics, things into your clear aligners, things into your practice, or you're leaving money on the table. So, and I think most DSOs and group practices have attempted to do that at some level. Acquiring, I think the question went to acquiring, acquiring a specialty office is certainly something that can work in certain situations. I think it's easier for some offices just to incorporate specialty into the existing platform and not go out and buy something else, especially with interest rates where they've been. But, there is always a market for solidly performing specialty offices. And I do think if, whoever asked the question was wondering about that or has, a high producing specialty office, there's certainly a market for that.
Another question that came in is, do you see more alignment among the dentist's understanding of the multiples that will be more realistic? So
yeah, not quite the way I would like to see that. I think they're
still having some tough conversations.
There is still a disconnect between, what the market is actually bearing and what a lot of sellers think they're going to get. And in some cases, Beth, you and I are friends with a lot of the brokerage firms out there. I've got a lot of dear friends there, so I'm not knocking on them, but I would say some brokers were quick we're not quick. We're slow to catch on to the change in the marketplace, and we're still counseling, their clients as to unrealistic multiples. Not all, but there was some of that going on. Also, some sellers, they don't get out much. The last time they heard about this was a couple years ago, and they have something in their mind that's no longer realistically, the case. Other folks just, maybe they have unrealistic expectations, and I can't judge them. This is their baby. They built it from the ground up. They've got a certain idea of what they want for it, and they don't like it if the market's not willing to pay that. So there's a variety of reasons, but I would unfortunately have to say there still is a fairly decent sized disconnect between what most sellers I talk to, Beth, I'm speaking a number of times this month, next month, to a lot of seller audiences, and they still come up to me sometimes and they ask me what I think. And often what I think, they're very surprised. Like what I say is a lot lower than they were thinking or expecting. And there's always a little bit of disappointment. Sometimes they want to argue with me a little bit. And, what I always say is you don't got to argue with me. Let's just test the market and it will be what it will be. Don't worry about what I say. Let's just see what the market's going to bear. And unfortunately, I think the market is bearing lower than they want it to be right now. So there is still a disconnect out there, unfortunately. Hopefully this year, the next couple quarters, we can get an alignment of what sellers are expecting and what the market is paying. I mean, that's certainly my education mission when I go out and I do a lot of my presentations, is to get everybody aligned. Again, you don't have to sell this year if you don't want to. I just want you to accurately understand what the market is bearing and not have an expectation that's not consistent with the market.
Well, in addition to expectations about, EBITDA and multiples, what are you counseling people as to what their expectation should be for staying on with the practice, post-sale? And has that changed over the past few years?
Yeah, that's not changed. In fact, the expectation is 3 to 5 years. I mean, signing a 5-year employment agreement is pretty standard. Some people will accept a 3 or 4 year deal in certain situations. The one exception is if you're 70 years old, 72 years old and selling your office, the bad news is you might get less for your office because you're not going to stay with the business that much. And understandably, if you're 72, you might say, look, I don't want to make a 5-year commitment. And the buyers understand that. But unfortunately, the price might be less. But if you are 70, 71, 72, yes, they're going to let you exit maybe 6 months, a year. They'll make some special provision for you. But if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, even early 60s, you're going to be expected to stay a minimum of 5 years. And that's not new, Beth. That's been the case for, 10, 12, 13. As long as I can remember, we've been doing these deals. That's kind of been the case. And of course, there would be no reason for that to change, because when a buyer walks up and buys your office, they want continuity. The last thing they want is to buy an office and then have, the dentist that runs that office and treats the patients to be on a golf course somewhere gone and everybody else picking up the pieces. So that's been one of those things, whether the market is hot, whether the market's lukewarm, whether the market's cold, they're always going to expect generally a minimum of 5 years, unless the dentist is old enough where, it would make sense for them to retire in a year or two.
What are you seeing with younger dentists? Are you seeing either more younger dentists that, were in private practice and now they're looking to sell to a DSO, or they may be working for a DSO with the expectation that they're going to become, a partial owner of the practice that they're working in as part of the DSO? And has that changed over the years?
Yeah, that's sort of dramatically changed. But there's 2 buckets of young dentists, okay? There's entrepreneur young dentists that really want to go out. Some of them, even in this market, say, hey, I want to start an organization or open up my office or do something. And then there's dentists that are part of the new generation that candidly just want to sort of work less and have more of a lifestyle. The latter that want to work less and have a lifestyle, they're all signing up with DSOs. They're all working for DSOs because you don't have to go out and open up your own office. You don't have to have the responsibility of being an owner. You can have a situation where you've got an employment agreement on that DSO's platform, and you get paid what you paid plus bonuses and incentives and other things. The harder you work, the more production, the more more you'll get paid, but that's up to you. You can work less and get paid less. So sort of figure out, what your comfort zone is of what you want to do. So that's what I would say, just sort of like the more lifestyle dentists are doing, of which there's a growing number. There really is. The ones that are entrepreneurial, they're doing all sorts of stuff. Okay. They're either going out in some cases and still opening up their own offices and creating their own organizations. Other times they're partnering with existing dentists, and they expect it to be a joint venture. They're like, hey, I'm not here to be your employee. I want to have a joint venture. I want to have
like a 49-51.
I want to have skin in the game, right? Could be 80-20, 70-30 in the beginning, but you're working up towards, joint ventures, or they're partnering with DSOs, but they're like, I don't want to just sign an employment agreement. I want to sign on here and I want to option to joint venture and open an office. And I've seen that from a lot of entrepreneurial dentists where they may go on for a year and just have an employment agreement, but they have an option after a year or two to joint venture with the DSO. And maybe it's a 51-49. They open up office number 2 and they're like a 49% owner in the DSOs, a 51% owner in the proceeds of that office. And, they're entrepreneurial, they're joint venturing. So, 2 buckets, the entrepreneurs and sort of the more lifestyle dentists, and it's almost in equal numbers, and they're doing sort of a little different things.
You mentioned that you're on the road a lot again, speaking at a lot of conferences. And tell me kind of like, what are the themes that you're seeing at these conferences? What are the hot topics that people are talking about?
Yeah, I mean, the hot topics that everybody's talking about are a lot of the things we're talking about. What can we expect in 2025? What is the market, going on with the marketplace? What's going on with the buyers? How much can I get? And a lot of sellers are still asking, as they should, what can I do to maximize the value of my organization? How do I pick the right partner? This week I'm going to be speaking at the Rocky Mountain Dental Conference in Denver, and I've got sort of 2 things. One is sort of All Things DSO, just an educational thing on DSOs so everybody can understand that. And then a secondary thing that I'm doing about how to pick the right partner. If I make the decision that I want to sell, how do I pick the right partner? And I've got sort of 2 presentations that I'm doing. And that those things are sort of timeless. And the last thing, Beth, of course, is same-store growth. People that go to these conferences want to talk about a couple things. If they want to do a deal, they want to know how they can maximize their value, how they pick the right partner, and what they could expect to get. If they're still running their office, they want best practices and how to increase, their same-store growth. So these things are still, very prominently featured at the events.
Now you're putting together the Dykema conference for August.
Yeah.
Have you started working on curriculum for that already?
Yes. I mean, that's not yes, that's hell yes. I mean, we're about, I would say 95% done with it. And it's really, I'm just waiting on a confirmation or 2. Like in my mind, I'm 100% done with it, but I need some speakers to confirm that they're good. And if for some reason they can't, then I may have to fill a small part of it, but I'm like 95%, done with the thing. And we do that. I mean, we've talked about this before, Beth, it's a 365-day sort of thing for me. And, I believe in getting the agenda out there quickly and understanding some of what we actually say might change between now and August, but at least understanding what the topic is going to be and what we're going to talk about. Like if we've got a panel on market conditions, look, we may not know what we're going to say till July or August, but we know we're going to talk about the prevailing market conditions at that time. And I've done a lot of things like that. I think we have a great lineup this year. John McEnroe, I know you're a tennis fan, Beth, is going to be our, one of our keynote speakers. So I'm really excited for it.
I've actually met him before,
Yeah, no, you told me. No, I mean, you got your former life with Regis and Kathy Lee and all that stuff. All kinds of people were coming through there that, you got to meet. And that must have been a real fun time in your life kind of doing this. I'm sorry that this show probably let you down after Regis and Kathy Lee. You're stuck with me, but, we do the best we can on the show.
Hey, we're getting down to the end of time. We did have a question that came in, though, about consolidating dental suppliers and products. And so one, is that procurement? Will that be something that you'll be talking about at the Dykema conference? And 2, do you have anything they're saying, what are some of the most important decisions for them in picking the right dental supply partner?
Yeah, I mean, procurement's very important. It was one of those things that, like, we started talking about it last year, and we said, it's not sexy. It's not a super interesting topic, but it actually can add to your bottom line. I mean, you got to roll up your sleeves and get in the weeds and look at some boring, uninteresting things, but really it can have a big impact. And, we had presentations last year at Dykema on procurement, and we're going to talk a little bit about this year. And, different vendors have different things to offer. You got to do your diligence. Everybody knows who the vendors are out there. We don't got to mention them on the show. You know who they are. And it takes about like one phone call and they'll race over to your practice and you'll get to meet with them. But, what I would encourage is reaching a contract with a particular vendor. Your organization shouldn't be scattered, ordering everything from every place. You should make your decision as to, just like, Beth, you and me, maybe I fly American Airlines because I'm in Dallas. That's what has worked for me. Mm-hmm. Other people tell me it's got to be United or Delta, and that's fine. But you got to make your decision as to what you're going to fly. Just like with the vendors, you got to make your decision because you'll always save more money. It's one of those things like bundling home and car. Like nobody should have one company for car insurance, one company for homeowners, one company for, some other insurance. You should, umbrella or something. It should all be, consolidated because you get the best rate. And it's the same thing with the procurement. You got to figure out what's best for you, but you should consolidate with one vendor because most often you're going to get the best price that way.
Well, the last question that I have that's come in is, what are you most excited about in 2025?
Yeah, I think we're going to, I think there's a lot of exciting technologies, out there. And I'm excited that more practices are going to be in a position to implement it. A lot of them told me last year, Brian, you're right. This looks pretty cool. I could see this could add value, but I can't make the investment this year in 24. I just can't do it. This year, almost everybody's telling me, maybe they would love to have 5 things, but they're only going to have 3 things because they're still have some budgetary constraints. But everybody's seems like they're in a position to invest in something this year and do something. And I can't wait to see a lot of these things, really come to fruition. They invest in a new diagnostic AI platform, a membership plan, a patient finance platform, something like that, and a new PMS system. And it really starts to pay dividends, for the organization. I'm excited about that. And I am excited that we are going to do more M&A deals. This is not going to be a return to 21. I'm sorry about that, but we're going to do more deals this year. And I'm real excited about that.
Well, Brian, we are out of time. It just flies by like it always does. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. If anyone on the call would like to reach Brian, you can email him at dykema@dykema.com. And to learn more about Planet DDS, please visit planetdds.com. From great information from dental industry experts like Brian to technology that can make your life easier, you can depend on Planet DDS. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Beth.